The boardroom smelled like expensive leather and cheap lies. I sat at the head of the mahogany table, watching my wife Alma pour whiskey into crystal glasses with the precision of a surgeon. Her manicured fingers moved gracefully, but I caught the slight tremor when she thought I wasn't looking. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying that practiced charm that had fooled me for 15 years. "Let's toast to another successful quarter at Fallon Beverages." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, Cedric Fallon, CEO of a company built on liquid refreshment, about to drink what I suspected was my own professional undoing. The other board members, Henderson, Walsh, and that self-satisfied newcomer Bradley, raised their glasses with the eagerness of opportunists sensing an easy target. I'd built this company from nothing, started with a food truck selling homemade sodas outside construction sites, worked my way up through sheer determination and 18-hour days. Now, sitting in this polished conference room 30 floors above the city, I could feel everything slipping away like sand through my fingers. To Fallon Beverages, Alma continued, her green eyes meeting mine with what anyone else would mistake for affection. And to my husband, who's worked so hard to get us here. The way she emphasized worked sent ice through my veins. I'd been catching these little verbal daggers for months now. Subtle digs disguised as compliments, questions about my judgment wrapped in concerned wife packaging. I lifted my glass, noting how Alma's gaze flickered to it with barely concealed anticipation. That's when I knew for certain. My best friend Blaze had been right when he cornered me at the gym last week, his weathered face serious as a heart attack. "She's not cheating on you, Ced," he'd said, adjusting the heavy bag between us. "She's planning something worse. She's replacing you." At the time, I'd laughed it off. Alma might be ambitious, calculating even, but she wouldn't betray me. We'd built this life together. We had history, shared dreams, a daughter in college who looked just like her mother but had my stubborn streak. Now, watching her fingers drum against the table as I brought the glass to my lips, I realized how naive I'd been. The whiskey was top shelf, smooth as silk going down, but there was something else. A bitter aftertaste that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I kept my expression neutral, even as my mind raced through possibilities. What had she put in there? Something to make me sick, disoriented, or just something to make me look incompetent in front of the board? "Excellent choice, darling," I said, setting the glass down with deliberate care. "Though I have to ask, did you add something special to mine?" Her laugh was musical, practiced. "Just a touch of honey, the way you like it." Liar. I'd never taken honey in my whiskey, not once in all our years together, but I smiled and nodded, playing the part of the trusting husband while my brain shifted into survival mode. "Actually," I continued, standing and moving toward the window, "I wanted to discuss something with all of you tonight, about the future direction of our company." Henderson leaned forward, his jowls quivering with interest. "What kind of direction?" I turned back to face them, noticing how tightly Alma gripped her glass. "Well, I've been thinking about expansion. New markets, new leadership. Sometimes you need to clear out the old to move forward." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Bradley shifted in his seat, and I caught the quick glance he exchanged with Alma. "Interesting. Very interesting." "That sounds rather drastic," Walsh said carefully. "What brought this on?" I moved back to my chair, but instead of sitting, I leaned against it casually. "Oh, you know how it is. You start noticing things. Late-night meetings you're not invited to. Whispered conversations that stop when you walk into a room. Financial reports that don't quite add up." Alma's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Cedric, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about loyalty, sweetheart. About trust. About the difference between building something together and tearing it down from the inside. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, setting it on the table with the screen facing up. I'm talking about conversations like the one you had with our friend Bradley here yesterday afternoon. The one where you discussed the best way to remove me from my position? The silence that followed was deafening. Bradley's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, while Henderson and Walsh looked back and forth between us with growing alarm. "That's ridiculous," Alma said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "You're being paranoid." I pressed play on the recording app. Her voice filled the room, crystal clear. "He's becoming a liability. Too set in his ways, too resistant to change. The board needs fresh leadership, and frankly, I think we all know who's really been running things behind the scenes." Bradley's voice followed. "The transition needs to look natural. If he appears unstable, makes poor decisions, the board will have no choice but to act." I stopped the recording and looked around the table. Henderson had gone gray as old concrete, while Walsh was staring at Alma like she'd grown a second head. Funny thing about trust, I said conversationally. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Like glass, really. You can try to glue the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks. Alma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is taken out of context. You don't understand the full situation. Oh, I understand perfectly. You've been planning a coup, using my own board members to push me out of the company I built. The question is, why? What did I do to deserve this level of betrayal? She lifted her chin with that familiar, defiant gesture I'd once found charming. You stopped listening, stopped growing. This company needs leadership that can adapt to the modern market, not someone stuck in the past. Stuck in the past? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I built this empire from nothing while you were still deciding what color to paint your nails. I've adapted to every market shift, every economic downturn, every challenge that came our way. And this is how you repay that dedication? Bradley finally found his voice. Look, Fallon, maybe we can work something out. A transition plan that benefits everyone. I turned to him with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. Oh, we're definitely going to work something out. But first, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. I walked over to Alma's chair and picked up her glass, still half full of whiskey. You see, when someone tries to drug your drink, it's generally considered bad form, especially when that someone is your wife of 15 years. Her eyes widened. I didn't. Of course you did. The question is what you put in there. Something to make me sick, disoriented, or just something to make me act erratically so these gentlemen would question my fitness to lead? I held up the glass, examining it in the light. Here's the thing about being married to someone for so long. You learn their tells, the way their left eye twitches when they're lying, how they bite their lower lip when they're nervous, the way they hold their breath when they're waiting for their plan to unfold. Alma was holding her breath right now. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, setting her glass back down with deliberate care. You're going to tell me exactly what you put in my drink, who else is involved in this little conspiracy, and what you hope to accomplish. And then we're going to discuss the terms of your resignation. My resignation? She laughed, but it came out shrill and desperate. You can't fire me, Cedric. I'm your wife. I'm the CFO. I know where all the bodies are buried. Wrong thing to say. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, like a stone dropping into still water. Is that a threat, Alma? The room had gone completely quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic 30 floors below. Henderson and Walsh looked like they wanted to be anywhere else on Earth, while Bradley seemed to be calculating his chances of making it to the door. It's a statement of fact, she said, straightening her shoulders. You need me. This company needs me. Whatever you think you heard on that recording, we can work through it. I nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Then I walked back to my seat and sat down, steepling my fingers in front of me. You know what the difference is between you and me, Alma? You see obstacles and look for ways around them. I see obstacles and find ways to remove them entirely. I picked up my phone and made a show of scrolling through the contacts. Henderson? Walsh. I think we need to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Full attendance required. Now wait just a minute, Bradley started, but I cut him off with a look. You'll want to bring your lawyers, I continued. All of you. Because we're going to be discussing some very serious allegations of corporate sabotage, breach of fiduciary duty, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Alma's face had gone from pale to ashen. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? I smiled and pulled out a small recording device from my other pocket. This has been running since before you poured the drinks. Everything you've said tonight, every admission, every threat, it's all here. The silence stretched out like a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest touch. Finally, Henderson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a step back and... No, I said firmly. We're way past the point of stepping back. This is about the future of Fallon Beverages, and I'll be damned if I let anyone destroy what I've built. I stood again, this time with the deliberate movements of a man who'd made his decision. Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. Alma, you and I need to have a private conversation. Bradley and the others couldn't get out of there fast enough, mumbling excuses and avoiding eye contact. Within minutes, it was just my wife and me, alone in the boardroom where I'd made some of the biggest decisions of my professional life. 15 years, I said quietly, not looking at her. 15 years of marriage, of building something together, of trusting you with everything that mattered to me. Cedric, please, let me explain. I held up a hand. No explanations, no excuses, No lies wrapped up in pretty words and crocodile tears. Just tell me one thing. Was any of it real? Our marriage, our partnership, our life together? She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It was real in the beginning, but somewhere along the way you stopped seeing me as an equal partner. I became just another employee, another asset to be managed. I turned to look at her then, really look at her, trying to see past the beautiful facade to the woman who just tried to poison me and steal my company. So you decided to take it all away. I decided to take control of my own destiny. I nodded, understanding finally clicking into place. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. What do you mean? I walked toward the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. You wanted control? You've got it. As of tomorrow morning, you'll be in complete control of your own life. No husband to hold you back, no company to tie you down, no safety net to catch you when you fall. You can't just... Watch me. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving her alone in that room with nothing but the echo of her own ambitions and the bitter taste of the poison she'd tried to feed me. The elevator ride down seemed to take forever, giving me time to process what had just happened. My marriage was over. My business partnership was over. In the space of one evening, everything I thought I knew about my life had been revealed as an elaborate lie. But as I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could see clearly. The fog of trust and assumption had lifted, and what lay ahead was crystal clear. Alma wanted a war? She was about to get one. And I'd learned a long time ago that the best defense is a devastating offense. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to Blaze's gym on the south side of town, a place that smelled like honest sweat and had never seen a manicured nail or heard a lie wrapped in silk. The neon sign flickered Murphy's Boxing, but everyone just called it Blaze Place. He was still there at midnight, working the heavy bag with the methodical precision of a man who'd spent 20 years as a cop before retiring to train fighters. His gray hair was damp with perspiration, and his knuckles were wrapped in tape that had seen better days. You look like someone who just watched his world burn down, he said without turning around. Close enough. I grabbed a pair of gloves from the rack and started wrapping my hands. You were right about Alma. Wish I'd been wrong. He stepped back from the bag and faced me. How bad? She tried to drug me during a board meeting. Had it all planned out with Bradley, make me look unstable, push me out, take over the company. Blaze whistled low. That's cold, even for her. What's your play? I started working the bag, letting my fists do the talking for a few minutes. Each punch was a release, a way to channel the rage and betrayal into something productive. I'm going to destroy her, I said between combinations. Not just beat her, destroy everything she's built, everything she cares about, everything she thinks she can take from me. Careful, said. Revenge is a dish best served with a clear head. My head's never been clearer. I threw a particularly vicious right hook that sent the bag swinging. She wants to play hardball? Fine, but she's about to learn that I wrote the rule book. The next morning, I was in my office before dawn, going through financial records with the intensity of an archaeologist uncovering ancient secrets. What I found made my stomach turn. Alma had been siphoning money from the company for months. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but steady amounts that added up to a significant sum. She'd been paying Bradley consulting fees for work that didn't exist, approving expense reports for trips that never happened, and authorizing bonuses for employees who weren't on our payroll. But the real revelation came when I dug into her personal accounts. She'd been planning this takeover for over a year, building a war chest and assembling allies while I'd been focused on actually running the business. My phone buzzed with a text from Henderson. Emergency board meeting moved to 2 p.m. Legal counsel will be present. I smiled grimly. Let them bring lawyers. I had something better. I had the truth. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the boardroom to find it packed with more people than I'd expected. Besides the usual board members, there were 3 lawyers I didn't recognize, a woman with a briefcase who looked like she ate nails for breakfast, and Alma, dressed in her most conservative suit and wearing an expression of wounded dignity. Gentlemen, ladies, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, thank you all for coming on such short notice. The woman with the briefcase spoke first. Mr. Fallon, I'm Patricia Morse, representing Mrs. Fallon and Mr. Bradley. We're here to discuss what we believe are some serious misunderstandings about last night's events. Misunderstandings? I laughed. That's an interesting way to describe attempted corporate sabotage. Bradley leaned forward. Look, Cedric, I think we all got a bit heated last night. Maybe we should start fresh, talk about what's best for the company moving forward. I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's projection system. You know what? You're absolutely right. Let's talk about what's best for the company. The first slide showed a detailed breakdown of unauthorized expenses over the past 18 months. The numbers were damning. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in questionable transactions, all approved by Alma and benefiting Bradley's consulting firm. This is what's been happening while I've been focused on actually growing our business, I said, watching their faces. Systematic theft, disguised as legitimate business expenses. Patricia Morse's expression didn't change. These are all authorized expenditures, approved by the CFO in the normal course of business. The CFO, who happens to be my wife, who's been planning to remove me from the company. I clicked to the next slide, showing a timeline of meetings between Alma and Bradley. The same CFO who's been having secret strategy sessions with a board member about the best way to make me look incompetent. Alma finally spoke. Cedric, you're taking normal business discussions and twisting them into something sinister. Patricia is right. These are legitimate expenses for legitimate consulting work. I clicked again. This slide showed Bradley's actual work product, or rather, the complete lack thereof. No reports, no deliverables, no measurable results from months of supposed consulting. Really? Then perhaps Mr. Bradley can explain to the board exactly what services he provided for these substantial fees. Bradley's face had gone red. I provided strategic guidance, market analysis, competitive intelligence. Show me. I leaned back in my chair. Show me one report, one analysis, one piece of intelligence that justified paying your firm more than we spend on our entire marketing department. The silence stretched out until Patricia Morse cleared her throat. Mr. Fallon, we're prepared to discuss a resolution that benefits everyone involved, perhaps a restructuring of leadership roles with appropriate compensation for all parties. A resolution? I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city where I'd built my empire from nothing. You want to know what resolution looks like? I turned back to face them. As of this morning, I've frozen all company accounts pending a full forensic audit. I've also filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office regarding the unauthorized expenditures. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Furthermore, I continued, I've instructed our head of security to change all access codes and retrieve all company property from anyone not explicitly authorized by me personally. Alma's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. I'm an officer of this company. I have rights. You had rights. You forfeited them when you tried to drug me and steal my company. I walked back to my seat, but remained standing. The board has a choice to make. You can stand with the people who've been systematically defrauding this company, or you can stand with the man who built it. Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Cedric, this is all very serious. Perhaps we should take some time to review everything before making any hasty decisions. Time? I laughed. Time is exactly what they were counting on. Time to cover their tracks, time to spin their story, time to make me look like the villain in their little drama. I clicked to the final slide, showing a detailed organizational chart. Here's how this is going to work. The board votes right now. Either you support a full investigation and the immediate suspension of all parties involved in this conspiracy, or I resign and take this entire mess public. Patricia Morse stood abruptly. Mr. Fallon, you're making threats that could be construed as extortion. I'm making a business proposal. Clean house now, or watch the company's reputation burn in the media circus that's going to follow when this story breaks. I pulled out my phone and showed them a draft press release. Local business owner discovers wife's plot to drug and defraud him. That's going to make for interesting headlines, don't you think? The lawyers huddled together, whispering furiously while Alma stared at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. You wouldn't, she said quietly. Try me. Walsh finally ended the stalemate. I propose that we place Mrs. Fallon and Mr. Bradley on leave while a full review of these claims is conducted. Seconded, Henderson said quickly. The vote was unanimous among the remaining board members. Patricia Morse gathered her papers with the efficiency of someone who just watched her client's case collapse in real time. This isn't over, Alma said as security escorted her from the building. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started. I watched from the window as she was led across the parking lot, her perfect posture finally showing cracks. She was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing the damage assessment when Blaze knocked on the door. Heard you cleaned house today, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. First round, I replied. But she's not going to go quietly. Alma never backs down from a fight, especially when she thinks she's been wronged. What's your next move? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. I've been doing some digging into her background. Turns out my loving wife has been keeping some interesting secrets. Blaze raised an eyebrow. What kind of secrets? The kind that explain why she was so confident about pushing me out? I opened the folder and spread out several documents. She's been in contact with our biggest competitor for months, not just casual communication, detailed discussions about our product development, our marketing strategies, our expansion plans. Industrial espionage? At minimum, but I think it goes deeper than that. I pointed to a series of emails I'd recovered from her company account. Look at the timeline. She starts talking to them right around the time she begins planning my removal. I don't think this was just about taking over Fallon Beverages. I think she was planning to sell us out entirely. Blaze whistled low. That's not just betrayal, that's treason. And it's going to cost her everything she's ever worked for. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. But first, I need to understand exactly how deep this goes. Who else is involved, how much information she shared, what they promised her in return. Sounds like you need some help with surveillance. I looked at my old friend, this man who'd stood by me through every challenge life had thrown my way. You sure you want to get involved in this? It's going to get messy. Brother, I've been waiting for you to fight back for months. Watching her tear you down piece by piece was like watching someone torture a friend. Whatever you need, I'm in. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't experienced in a long time, the certainty that I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Then let's go to war. The next morning brought the first counter-strike. I was reviewing security footage when my assistant knocked on the door with an expression that screamed trouble. Mr. Fallon, there are reporters outside. They're asking about allegations of corporate misconduct and marital disputes. I walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. 3 news vans had set up camp, complete with satellite dishes and cameramen. Alma had moved faster than I'd expected. My phone buzzed with a call from Henderson. Cedric, we have a problem. Someone leaked the board meeting details to the press. They're calling it a family feud that's tearing apart a successful business. Let me guess, they're painting me as the unstable husband who's using his position to punish his wife for personal reasons. How did you know? I hung up and called Blaze. Change of plans. We're moving to phase 2 immediately. What happened? She went public. Time to show her what real publicity looks like. Within an hour, I was sitting across from Janet Morrison, the city's most respected investigative journalist. Her reputation for uncovering corporate corruption was legendary, and her integrity was unquestionable. Mr. Fallon, she said, setting up her recording device, I understand you have some serious allegations about financial misconduct at your company. I have documentation of systematic theft, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I slid a carefully prepared folder across the table. What I don't have is a wife I can trust or a board member who isn't compromised. She opened the folder and began reviewing the documents, her experienced eyes quickly identifying the most damaging evidence. These financial records show significant irregularities, she said after several minutes. But what makes you certain this wasn't just poor oversight rather than intentional fraud? I played the recording from the board meeting, watching her expression change as she heard Alma and Bradley discussing their plans in their own words. This conversation took place after they tried to drug me, I explained. The entire scheme was designed to make me appear unstable so they could justify removing me from leadership. Janet looked up from her notes. You're alleging that your wife attempted to poison you? I'm alleging that she put something in my drink without my knowledge, then waited for me to consume it while discussing my removal from the company. Draw your own conclusions. She spent another hour going through the evidence, asking pointed questions and verifying details. When she finally turned off her recorder, her expression was grim. Mr. Fallon, if even half of this is accurate, you're looking at criminal charges against multiple people, including your wife. I'm looking at justice, I corrected. For 15 years, I trusted her with everything that mattered to me. She repaid that trust by trying to destroy me. What do you hope to accomplish by going public with this? I stood and walked to the window of the coffee shop where we'd met, watching ordinary people go about their ordinary lives, blissfully unaware of the corporate warfare happening around them. I want everyone to know the truth, not the sanitized version Alma's lawyers are peddling, but the real story of what happens when ambition becomes more important than loyalty. The story broke that evening on the 6 o'clock news, and by morning it had gone viral. The headlines were everything I'd hoped for. CEO exposes wife's corporate conspiracy, marriage and business betrayal rocks local company, executives plot to drug husband revealed. But Alma wasn't finished. By noon, her legal team had filed a defamation lawsuit and obtained a restraining order claiming I was harassing her. The local business journal ran a counter story suggesting I was having a breakdown and using my position to settle personal scores. That's when I discovered the true scope of her planning. Blaze called me at the office with news that made my stomach clench. Said, "You need to see this. I've been watching Alma's apartment, and guess who just showed up? Bradley? Worse, your daughter Emma." I felt the world tilt sideways. Emma was supposed to be at college, 3 states away, focused on her studies and her future. The last thing she needed was to be dragged into this mess. What's she doing there? Looks like Alma called in reinforcements. They've been talking for 2 hours, and from what I can see through the window, it's getting heated. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Whatever game Alma was playing, involving our daughter, crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. The drive to Alma's downtown apartment took 20 minutes in traffic that seemed designed to test my patience. I'd bought her this place 2 years ago when she complained about the commute from our suburban home. Now I realized it had probably been part of her exit strategy all along, a place to retreat when her plans came to fruition. I found Emma in the lobby, tears streaming down her face and her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. At 19, she looked younger than her years, overwhelmed by forces she couldn't understand or control. "Dad?" She looked up at me with eyes that held confusion and hurt. "What's happening? Mom says you've lost your mind, that you're trying to destroy her for no reason." I knelt down beside her chair and took her hands in mine. They were cold and trembling. "Emma, sweetheart, there are things going on between your mother and me that have nothing to do with you. Adult things, business things, complicated things. She says you're lying about her, making up stories to hurt her business reputation." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to find the right words. "How do you explain to your daughter that her mother is a criminal without destroying her faith in everyone she's ever trusted? What did she tell you, exactly? That you've been acting strange for months, making paranoid accusations, and that you finally snapped and are trying to frame her for things she didn't do." I helped her to her feet and guided her toward a quiet corner of the lobby. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Everything I've accused your mother of doing, I have evidence for. Recordings, financial records, documentation that proves she's been stealing from the company and planning to remove me from leadership. But why would she do that? I wish I knew. Maybe she got tired of being married to someone she saw as an obstacle. Maybe she fell in love with the idea of power more than she loved our family. Maybe she just decided that what she wanted was more important than what we'd built together." Emma was quiet for a long time, processing information that no child should have to hear about their parents. "She wants me to testify on her behalf," she finally said. "To tell people that you've been acting erratically, that she's been worried about your mental state." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Using our daughter as a weapon in her war against me was beyond anything I'd thought even Alma was capable of. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I needed to talk to you first, that I couldn't choose sides between my parents without understanding what was really happening." I felt a surge of pride in the young woman my daughter had become, even in the midst of this nightmare. "Emma, I would never ask you to choose sides. This is between your mother and me, and whatever happens, you'll always be the most important thing in both our lives. But she says if you win, she'll lose everything, her job, her reputation, maybe even her freedom." I nodded grimly. "That's possible. What she did was serious, and there are going to be consequences. Can't you just forgive her? Work it out somehow?" I looked at this beautiful, innocent young woman who still believed that love could conquer all, that families could survive anything if they just tried hard enough. "Some things can't be forgiven, sweetheart. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal." We talked for another hour, and I explained as much as I could without burdening her with the full scope of her mother's deceptions. When she finally left, she hugged me tighter than she had since she was a little girl. "I love you, Dad. Whatever happens, I love you." "I love you too, Emma. More than you'll ever know." That evening, I sat in my empty house, the house Alma had abandoned when she moved to her downtown apartment, and tried to process the full magnitude of what I was facing. This wasn't just about business anymore. It wasn't even just about betrayal. It was about the complete destruction of everything I'd believed about my life and the people in it. My phone rang. Blaze. "How did it go with Emma?" Alma tried to turn her into a character witness. Our daughter, Blaze. She was willing to use our child as ammunition in her war against me. That's lower than I thought even she could go. It gets worse. I did some more digging into her communications with our competitors. She didn't just share our business plans. She gave them our entire customer database, our pricing strategies, our upcoming product launches, everything. How much damage are we talking about? Potentially millions in lost revenue, maybe tens of millions if they use the information to undercut our major contracts. That's not just betrayal, that's corporate espionage on a massive scale. I walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood where Alma and I had planned to grow old together. The house across the street still had Christmas lights up from last year, and the Johnsons' dog was barking at shadows in their backyard. I've been thinking about what she said, that I'd stopped seeing her as an equal partner, that I treated her like just another employee. You think there's truth to that? Maybe. I built this company through sheer force of will, making every major decision, controlling every aspect of the operation. Maybe I did shut her out of the real leadership. That doesn't justify what she did. No, it doesn't. But it might explain it. I turned away from the window. The question now is how far I'm willing to go to make her pay for it. What do you mean? I mean, I have enough evidence to destroy her completely. Not just her career, but her freedom, her reputation, her relationship with Emma, everything. The question is whether that's justice or just revenge. What's the difference? I thought about that for a long time before answering. Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making someone suffer. I'm not sure which one I want anymore. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying to myself. I knew exactly what I wanted, and it had nothing to do with justice. I wanted Alma to feel the same crushing betrayal I'd experienced. I wanted her to understand what it meant to have everything you'd worked for stripped away by someone you trusted. I wanted her to know the taste of her own medicine, and I was going to make sure she got every bitter drop. The call came at 3 a.m, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and completely unexpected. Mr. Fallon? This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Fraud Division. I'm calling about the complaint you filed regarding financial irregularities at your company. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Yes, Detective. Have you had a chance to review the evidence? We have, and I need to inform you that we're opening a formal investigation. We'll need you to come in tomorrow to provide additional testimony. After I hung up, I couldn't get back to sleep. The machinery of justice was finally grinding into motion, but I felt no satisfaction. If anything, I felt hollow, like I'd won a battle I'd never wanted to fight. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Blaze called while I was getting dressed for my meeting with the detective. Said, "You need to know something. Alma's planning to run." What do you mean, run? I mean, pack up and disappear. I've been watching her apartment, and she's been moving things out all week. Yesterday, I followed her to a storage unit across town. She's liquidating assets, closing accounts, getting ready to vanish. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How long do we have? Based on what I'm seeing, maybe 48 hours before she's gone for good. I finished dressing and grabbed my keys. Meet me at the office. If she's planning to run, that means she's more desperate than I thought. Desperate people make mistakes. The meeting with Detective Martinez was productive but frustrating. She was thorough, professional, and completely focused on building an airtight case. But cases take time, and time was exactly what I didn't have. Mr. Fallon, she said as we concluded the interview, I want you to understand that this investigation could take months to complete. Financial crimes are complex, and we need to ensure every piece of evidence is properly documented. Detective, I have reason to believe the primary suspect is planning to flee the jurisdiction. Her expression sharpened. What kind of reason? I explained what Blaze had observed, watching her take careful notes. We'll look into it, she said finally. But unless we can prove imminent flight risk, there's not much we can do to prevent her from traveling. I left the police station feeling like the system I'd trusted to deliver justice was moving too slowly to matter. By the time they built their case, Alma would be sipping cocktails on a beach somewhere, living off the money she'd stolen from my company. That afternoon, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. I called Patricia Morse, Alma's lawyer. Mr. Fallon, she said when she came on the line, I'm surprised to hear from you directly. I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? The kind that keeps your client out of prison and gives me back what she stole. There was a long pause. I'm listening. Full restitution of all misappropriated funds, resignation from the company with no severance or benefits, a signed confession detailing her activities, and a guarantee that she'll cooperate with the ongoing investigation. And in return, I don't pursue criminal charges for the theft. The fraud investigation continues, but I don't push for maximum penalties. That's generous. What's the catch? No catch. I want this over. I want my company back, I want my money back, and I want my life back. Your client can disappear to whatever tropical paradise she's been planning, but she does it with clean hands. I'll need to discuss this with my client. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires, and she takes her chances with the criminal justice system. I hung up and immediately called Blaze. How's our surveillance going? She's definitely accelerating her timeline. Just loaded 3 more boxes into her car and made another trip to the bank. Good. Let her think she's getting away with it. What's your play? I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, a clean escape, but first she's going to pay for the privilege. The call came 18 hours later. Patricia Morse's voice was strained, suggesting the conversation with her client hadn't gone smoothly. Mr. Fallon, we accept your terms with one modification. My client wants a guarantee that you won't pursue any civil litigation beyond the restitution amount. Agreed. When can we meet to finalize the arrangements? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., at my office. I spent that evening preparing for what I knew would be the last time I'd see Alma as anything other than a stranger. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, the partner I'd trusted with my dreams. She'd been replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of betrayals I'd never imagined. The next morning, I arrived at Patricia Morse's office to find Alma already there, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. The confident, commanding woman who'd tried to drug me and steal my company had been replaced by someone who looked tired and defeated. Cedric, she said quietly when I entered the conference room. Alma. We sat across from each other at a polished table while lawyers shuffled papers and discussed terms. It felt surreal, like watching the dissolution of 15 years of marriage reduced to contractual language and financial calculations. The restitution amount comes to $847,000, Patricia Morse said, sliding a document across the table. My client is prepared to transfer these funds immediately upon signing the agreement. I reviewed the confession she'd prepared. It was comprehensive, detailing every theft, every deception, every betrayal in clinical legal language that somehow made it seem both more and less than what it really was. There's one more thing, I said, looking directly at Alma. I want to know why. Cedric, that's not part of the agreement. Patricia Morse started, but Alma held up a hand. No, it's okay. He deserves an answer. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded on the table. Do you remember when we first started the company? How excited we were, how we'd stay up all night planning and dreaming about what we could build together. I nodded. Somewhere along the way, those dreams became your dreams. The company became your company. I became just someone who handled the books while you made all the real decisions. That's not how I saw it. I know. That's what made it so much worse. You didn't even realize you were shutting me out. She looked up at me then, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with. I started planning to leave you about 2 years ago. Just leave, take my share of our assets, and start over somewhere else. What changed? I realized I didn't want to start over. I wanted what we'd built together, what I'd helped create. I wanted the company, the success, the recognition, all of it. And the only way to get it was to take it. So you decided to destroy me instead of just walking away? I decided to take what was mine. The methods, maybe I went too far. I signed the documents, watching her do the same. With each signature, 15 years of marriage and partnership dissolved into legal obligations and financial transfers. What will you do now? I asked as we prepared to leave. Start over somewhere else. Maybe find someone who sees me as an equal partner from the beginning. And Emma? I'll always be her mother. Geography doesn't change that. I stood and walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Alma, I'm sorry it came to this. Sorry that we couldn't find a way to work through our problems without destroying everything we'd built. So am I, she said quietly. So am I. That afternoon, I watched from my office window as Alma cleaned out her desk and left the building for the last time. She moved with dignity and purpose, not looking back, not acknowledging the whispers and stares from employees who'd watched our private war play out in public. Blaze knocked on my door as her car disappeared from the parking lot. How do you feel? He asked. Empty, I said honestly. I thought I'd feel vindicated, or satisfied, or something. Instead, I just feel empty. That's normal. You've been running on anger and adrenaline for weeks. Now that it's over, you're crashing. Is it over? The legal stuff? Yeah, mostly. The personal stuff? He shrugged. That's going to take time. I turned away from the window and looked at my office, the place where I'd built my dreams and watched them crumble, where I'd discovered the true cost of trust and the bitter taste of betrayal. I need to rebuild, I said. Not just the company, but everything. My relationship with Emma, my faith in people, my ability to trust again. That's going to be the hardest part. Yeah, but it's also the most important part. Because if I let this destroy my ability to trust, to love, to believe in people, then she wins. Even in defeat, she wins. I walked to my desk and picked up a framed photo of Emma from her high school graduation. She was smiling, full of hope and possibilities, blissfully unaware of the storm that was coming. "I'm going to call Emma," I said. "We'll invite her to dinner. Start rebuilding what we can salvage from this mess." "Good plan." And said, "Yeah? You did the right thing. It would have been easy to let the anger consume you, to pursue revenge instead of justice. But you found a way to end it without destroying yourself in the process." As Blay left, I sat alone in my office and thought about the difference between justice and revenge, between winning and surviving, between the man I'd been and the man I was becoming. Alma had gotten what she wanted: freedom, money, a chance to start over, but she'd paid for it with everything that really mattered: her family, her reputation, her integrity. I'd gotten what I needed: my company, my dignity, my future. But I'd paid for it too, with 15 years of shared history and the naive belief that love could overcome anything. The phone rang. Emma's number appeared on the screen. "Hi, Dad. I was wondering, could we have dinner tonight? Just the two of us? I think we need to talk." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'd like that very much, sweetheart. I'd like that very much." Outside my window, the city continued its daily rhythm, indifferent to the personal dramas playing out in corporate boardrooms and legal offices. Life moved forward, as it always did, carrying the wounded and the healing alike toward whatever came next. I had my company back. I had my daughter's love. I had learned hard lessons about trust and betrayal, about the difference between partnership and control, about the price of ambition unchecked by conscience. Most importantly, I had survived, scarred, changed, but intact. And for now, that was enough. 3 months later, I thought the worst was behind me. The company was recovering, Emma and I were rebuilding our relationship, and I'd begun to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could move forward with some semblance of peace. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports. My assistant's voice was tight with concern. "Mr. Fallon, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's about your wife, your ex-wife. She says it's urgent." The woman who walked into my office was elegant, well-dressed, and completely unfamiliar. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted, and her smile never quite reached her eyes. "Mr. Fallon, thank you for seeing me. I'm Victoria Ashford." The name meant nothing to me, but something about her presence made my instincts scream danger. "What can I do for you, Miss Ashford?" "It's about Alma, and the rather unfortunate situation you both found yourselves in recently." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, my mind racing through possibilities. "I'm not sure what you mean. My divorce is a private matter." "Oh, but it's not private at all, is it? Corporate fraud, theft, betrayal. These things have a way of becoming public knowledge." She settled into the chair with practiced grace. "I represent certain interests that were affected by your wife's activities." "What kind of interests?" "The kind that don't appreciate being double-crossed." Her smile grew sharper. "You see, Alma wasn't just stealing from your company, she was also stealing from mine." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Your company?" "I'm the CEO of Meridian Industries. Perhaps you've heard of us?" I had. Meridian was our biggest competitor, the company I'd suspected of receiving stolen information from Alma. But if Victoria Ashford was telling the truth, then my ex-wife had been playing an even more complex game than I'd realized. "Ms. Ashford, I think you'd better explain exactly what you're talking about." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Alma approached us 6 months ago with an offer to provide inside information about Fallon Beverages in exchange for a substantial consulting fee and a promise of employment after her transition to new management. She was selling us out to you." "Initially, yes. We paid her handsomely for product development plans, customer lists, pricing strategies, all very valuable intelligence." Victoria's expression hardened. "But then we discovered she was selling the same information to 3 other competitors, and some of the intelligence she provided was deliberately falsified." I stared at her, trying to process this new layer of betrayal. "She was playing all of you against each other." "Exactly. While you thought she was planning a simple corporate takeover, she was actually running a sophisticated intelligence operation, selling real and fake information to multiple parties while planning to disappear with everyone's money." "How much money are we talking about?" "Including what she took from your company, nearly $3 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd recovered less than $1 million from Alma in our settlement. She'd walked away with more than twice that amount from her other schemes. "Why are you telling me this?" Victoria leaned forward, her eyes cold as winter. "Because she's surfaced again, and this time she's using your daughter as leverage." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What do you mean?" "Emma received a scholarship to study abroad, didn't she? A very generous scholarship from a foundation that covers all her expenses for a year in Europe." My mouth went dry. Emma had been thrilled about the opportunity, and I'd been proud that her academic achievements had earned such recognition. "What about it?" "The foundation is a shell company funded by Alma. She's using it to keep Emma close while she negotiates the return of the money she stole from us." "That's impossible. Emma would have told me if she'd heard from her mother." "Would she? Even if Alma convinced her that contacting you would put you in danger? Even if she believed she was protecting you by staying quiet?" I grabbed my phone and called Emma's number. It went straight to voicemail, as it had for the past 3 days. I'd assumed she was busy with her studies, adjusting to life in a new country. "Where is she?" "Prague. At least, that's where the scholarship was supposed to take her. But our intelligence suggests she's actually in Switzerland with your ex-wife." I stood abruptly, my chair rolling backward. "If you've hurt my daughter—" "We haven't touched her, but we will recover our money, Mr. Fallon, with or without your cooperation." "What do you want from me?" "Help us find Alma. You know her better than anyone. You understand how she thinks, how she operates, what motivates her." "And if I refuse?" Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Then Emma becomes collateral damage in a very expensive business dispute." I walked to the window, staring out at the city while my mind raced through options. Every choice seemed to lead to disaster, for Emma, for me, for whatever remained of the life I'd tried to rebuild. "There's something else," Victoria continued, "something that might motivate you to cooperate." "What?" "The money Alma stole from you. It was just the beginning. She's been systematically destroying your business relationships, spreading false information about your company's financial stability, convincing your biggest customers to switch to competitors." I turned back to face her. "That's impossible. I would have noticed." "Would you? When 3 major contracts weren't renewed last month? What did you attribute that to? Market conditions? Competitive pricing? Or did you consider that someone with inside knowledge might be sabotaging your relationships?" "The contracts. I had wondered about the sudden shift in customer loyalty, the unexpected decision by long-term partners to seek other suppliers. I had attributed it to the negative publicity from my divorce. But what if it was more deliberate?" "She's been systematically dismantling everything you built," Victoria continued. "While you thought you'd won, she's been destroying you from a distance." I slumped back into my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of Alma's deception. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, had become something monstrous, a predator who would sacrifice anyone and anything for money and revenge. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Help us find her. Use your knowledge of her habits, her preferences, her psychology to track her down. In return, we'll ensure Emma's safety and provide you with the evidence you need to expose her sabotage of your business." "And then what? You eliminate her?" Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mr. Fallon, we're business people, not criminals. We want our money back and assurance that she won't continue her activities. What happens after that is between you and your ex-wife." I thought about Emma somewhere in Europe, possibly in danger because of her mother's greed. I thought about my company, slowly being strangled by an enemy I hadn't even known I was fighting. I thought about the naive man I'd been just months ago, believing that love and trust were enough to build a life on. "I'll need guarantees about Emma's safety." "Of course. And I want complete information about everything Alma has done, every theft, every deception, every act of sabotage." "Agreed. And when this is over, when we find her and recover your money, I want her brought back to face justice here. Real justice, not just a business settlement." Victoria nodded. "That can be arranged." I stood and extended my hand. "Then we have a deal." As we shook hands, I felt like I was making a pact with forces I didn't fully understand. But Emma was in danger, and my life's work was under attack. Whatever Alma had become, whatever she was capable of, I couldn't let her destroy everything I cared about. "Where do we start?" I asked. "With what you know about her. Her habits, her fears, her desires. Where would she go to feel safe? What would make her feel powerful? How does she think when she's cornered?" I closed my eyes and tried, with more effort than I expected, to summon the woman I had once loved so fiercely, the woman whose laughter used to echo through our home and whose presence once made everything feel brighter. I tried to remember her as she had been, not as the shadow she had become. It felt almost impossible to reconcile the warm, impulsive persons I had married with the cold strategist now orchestrating elaborate betrayals from the shadows. For a long moment, nothing came. Then, slowly, memories drifted in like fragments of an old photograph. She always loved the mountains, I said finally, my voice quieter than before. She said they made her feel like she was standing above every problem in her life, like nothing could touch her up there. That sense of freedom was everything to her. And she's always been claustrophobic. She'd never choose a place that makes her feel trapped or closed in. She avoids anything underground, anything confined. She needs open air. Victoria nodded, her pen already moving. Good. What else? I let out a long breath, letting more pieces fall into place. She's extremely particular about her appearance, every detail. She'd want access to the best salons, the most exclusive shops, luxury hotels, places where she can reinvent herself and feel untouchable. And she's always been overly cautious about safety. She studies exits everywhere she goes. She would pick locations with multiple pathways out, places where she can vanish at a moment's notice. Victoria didn't interrupt. She just kept writing, her expression steady, building a psychological portrait that felt both painfully familiar and disturbingly distant. Hearing it spoken aloud made it clear. The woman I once thought I understood was now a stranger wearing the memory of her face. There's something else, I said, feeling the weight of it settle in my chest. She's competitive in a way that shuts out everything else. For her, winning isn't enough. She needs to feel superior. She needs to see the people she challenges fall apart. That's why she hasn't just disappeared quietly. That's why she's been attacking my company. She wants a spectacle. She wants my downfall to be public, dramatic, impossible to ignore. Victoria lifted her eyes. Which means she's still watching, still involved, still leaving a trail for us, whether she means to or not. I nodded, though the thought made my stomach tighten. Yes, but it also means she's unpredictable. If she senses we're closing in, if she feels even a hint of being cornered, I can't imagine how she'll react. Victoria hesitated, then asked the one question I'd been avoiding. Even regarding Emma? The words hung between us like thick, toxic fog. I felt my throat close because the honest answer was the one I least wanted to say. I wanted to insist that no matter what had happened, no matter how far gone she seemed, Alma would never cross certain lines. She would never hurt our daughter. But I had believed many things about her that turned out to be illusions. I don't know, I said at last. The admission felt like stepping off a ledge. 6 months ago, I would have sworn she was incapable of it. Now, I don't trust my certainty about anything when it comes to her. Victoria closed her folder slowly, almost thoughtfully, and stood. Then we don't have time to hesitate. We need to find her, and soon. When the door closed behind her, the silence felt enormous. I sat there absorbing the truth that had been creeping toward me for weeks. This wasn't the aftermath of a nightmare. It was the beginning of a longer, deeper one. Alma had twisted every part of my life into a kind of puzzle, using my trust and memories as pieces in her strategy. And now she was pulling our daughter into it, weaving her into whatever final plan she had been building. But something had changed. I wasn't the same man she had fooled so easily before. This time I had people beside me, people who understood the stakes, people who had resources and experience I had never possessed. I had allies who weren't blinded by old emotions. This time, when I faced her, it wouldn't be as the man she once controlled. It would be on ground I chose, under terms I set. And this time, there would be no leniency, no negotiations, no path back to the person she used to be. The woman who had tried to tear my world apart was about to witness what resolve looked like when pushed too far. I picked up my phone, feeling a steadiness I hadn't felt in months, and called Blaze. "Pack a bag," I said. "We're going to Europe." Blaze exhaled sharply. "All right, but what exactly is waiting for us there?" I stared out the window, watching the city blur into a gray haze. The end of this story.